Hey, Eddie the Tattooed Realtor here. Before we get started, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions or comments, and I'm just excited to gain you as a subscriber. So feel free to give that subscribe button a click. So before we get started, I want you to kind of lay a premise of where this video is coming from. So this video is coming from more of a process, more of documenting a series of how things came around and how things came about when it came to buying our first home. You know, a lot of times home ownership is like that epitome in the American dream, if you will. You all want that, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, white picket fence with a doghouse. And a lot of times it can seem unattainable, or it can seem very confusing, convoluted, if you will. And I don't want it to be like that anymore. I want to help you understand the process in its entirety. And that's why I've taken time to think about this and to walk you through the process of what my wife and I had to go through when we bought our home. So I'll take a step back. When we bought our house here in Margate, we've lived here for almost 3 years. It'd be 3 years in July. And when that happened, it was an intimidating process. We had been renting for a couple years prior to that. Actually, excuse me, my bad. We've been renting all the entire time we've been married before that. We've been married for 10 years this year, so we've been renting for 7 years before that. And, I became a real estate professional, as you guys know, 8 years ago. And I began to see the process of home buying and understanding it little by little. And I realized that, home ownership, it can be a very good thing when done correctly. And of course, making what they call money on the purchase, which means you're not overpaying for something. You're not making an emotional decision. You're making a very logical and rational decision, which is definitely hard when you're looking at a home to move into. So we decided that we were going to buy a house, I would say probably between 6 months to, 10 months before we actually started the process, because I knew I needed to save up a nest egg. We decided to use an FHA product, which is a first home buyer product here in Florida. And it allows you to put between, about 3.5% down payment on the property. So I'll give you some simple math. 3.5% of $100,000 is $3,500. So essentially you would need at least $3,500 for your down payment. Now, the one thing that I didn't understand at that time when it was all fresh, but I understand crystal clear now, especially having helped hundreds of families, is that the down payment is only half of that fraction, or half of the equation. The other half is closing costs. When you're buying here in Broward County specifically, your closing costs as a buyer are probably going to be right around 2% of the purchase price, which means in total, you should have about 5% or more for your closing costs. So at $100,000, I'm just using this number to be simple. Let's say 6%, let's just round it up, 6% is $6,000. At $200,000, 6% is $12,000. So that gives you a really good idea of the amount of money you're going to need to put for a down payment if you plan to use an FHA product. Now, we chose to use a first-time home buyer's product because of the advantage of putting a smaller down payment. It allowed me to move quicker. Now, having known what I know now, I probably would have gone with a lower percentage down conventional loan, which has less restrictions on it, like private mortgage insurance. Because with FHA, you can't get rid of private mortgage insurance ever since I think like 2006 or something like that without refinancing, which is going to cost you more money because you're going to have closing costs on top of that. And there's just a big hoo-ha to go through. So I wish I would have known about the difference between FHA and conventional more clearly 3 years ago, but I know a lot better now. So we decided to make this move, and we decided to save up as much money as possible. Once we started saving up, I did my absolute best to store up as much cash as possible. And we were able to store up, I think we ended right around $15,000 in saved up funds because I knew I needed money to move and paint and renovations and all that kind of stuff. So I knew I needed that needed to happen. And so when we made that process, or when we started that process, I saved up that money. Once we hit about the 3-month out mark, I talked to our landlord. Because you definitely want to talk to your landlord to get them on the same page. Because once your lease is up, depending on where you live, you may not be able to go month to month. And that could create a total hiccup in your lease because they might want you to be out or sign another year lease. Now you're stuck. So we talked to our landlord. They were super cool. And we went month to month, meaning we didn't have a lease really, just like a month to month lease. And we started looking. Now, when we started looking, I had obviously the advantage of being able to access the MLS, but I also use things like Craigslist and Zillow and Trulia. But obviously, I've talked before about being very cautious with Zillow and Trulia. And I kind of created a list of what we wanted in our home. Since it's only my wife and I, we decided that we could make it with a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. And so we put that as a minimum. And of course, we left the maximum open. And our price range was right around that $100,000, $200,000 mark, because I had already been pre-qualified for my mortgage broker. Because you definitely want to talk to a mortgage broker or a mortgage company, your bank, your lender, whatever, to understand how much you can borrow. Because if you don't have an idea how much you can afford when you're looking at properties, it's just pretty much utter nonsense, because you're just wasting your time, in my opinion. So we got the pre-approval, and then we started looking at properties. Now, the home, I'm actually standing in our backyard right now. The home we actually ended up purchasing 3 years ago, it's a cute little home. It's about 1,000 square feet, living area. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. I'm on about 10,000, 11,000 square feet of land, which is a very large lot for South Florida. And we wouldn't have chosen this property had I not been, obviously you guys know I'm a Christian, and we were praying about it and in devotion about it. And I just felt God kind of tell me, hey, Eddie, check this property out. When we were looking through the photos were not very good. The rooms looked super small. I didn't say anything about the second bathroom because it was outside, and not like literally like a porta potty, but it was like outside. And I'm actually staring at it. And I just said, you know what, we're gonna go check it out. And I'm so thankful we did. I walked in and I realized what a gem this home could be. And it just wasn't represented properly. I felt God set aside for us. So when you begin looking at properties, kind of think outside the box. Maybe the photographs don't match up. Now, I'm not saying go way off in left field, but maybe the photographs don't match up. So if you have that gut feeling, or that the feeling of the Holy Spirit, if you know, go with it. Kind of focus in that direction. So once we saved up the money, we talked to our landlord. We arranged it so that the move-in time would go out perfectly, or as best as possible, because I actually cleaned our unit before we left. Moved into our home now. We did some minor renovations, had our interior designer do the interior designing for us, and then we moved in. Now, during that home buying process, we ran into a lot of different things, like for instance, your inspection period you have, your appraisal. We ran into some issues about our appraisal, had to go back for another appraisal. And you see our home was listed at $199. I knew it wasn't comparable. It wasn't worth $199, $199,000. And I figured I'll just see what the appraisal comes back at. It came back about $25,000 lower than that. So obviously we got a good purchase. And then obviously the inspection period and the appraisal period and all those sort of periods that passed through it. And you know, when we moved in, it was a blessing because we had our own home now, but there are a lot of components we didn't know about. And just to kind of like not make this video super long, but some things you also have to think about when buying a home, especially your first one, is you have to think about these costs that aren't gonna necessarily, you're not thinking about. For instance, sometimes cities require a deposit with the water when you have the water turned on, or FPL may require it, or whatever power company you have may require it. You got to look at certain zoning things if you have a work vehicle, or you know, the age of the driveway, or the roof, or the plumbing. There are a lot of these unexpected costs that could arise that you need to be prepared for. A lot of times, or every time when I work with a customer looking to buy a property, I always ask myself and ask them, you know, what's really important to you? What are you trying to achieve with this move? And we don't want to overextend ourselves or overextend our reach. So those are my thoughts about, and that's my story about the process of us buying a home. I hope they helped you in any way. And if you have any questions, feel free to call, text, or email. I mean, I am here in Broward County, and I've been proudly serving families in Broward and West Palm Beach County for over 8 years now, being a full-time professional realtor. But if you're in another state, hey, give me a call anyways, or email me. I'd be more than happy to explain it any way I possibly can. So this is Eddie, the Tattooed Realtor, signing off on this beautiful Monday afternoon here in sunny South Florida. And I hope that you guys found this video resourceful. Feel free to like, click, follow, subscribe, wherever you're watching this, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. All right, have a great day.